Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tami Stackelhaus, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with Fibro Fog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. You're listening to the Fibromyalgia Podcast with Tami Stackelhaus, episode 31. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhaus. In today's episode, I am interviewing my friend Jenni Grover, ChronicBabe herself. We will be talking about her transition from ChronicBabe to her new project, Creative Resilience. I know if you've been following Jenni at all, if you are part of the ChronicBabe community, you received an email just like I did a while back talking about the end of the ChronicBabe era. And we dive into that in my interview with Jenni, how ChronicBabe came about, and how the end, so to speak, came about, and we'll answer all your questions about what's happening next with ChronicBabe, meaning Jenni, and what's happening next with ChronicBabe, meaning the website and the resources. So stay tuned for that. Before we dive in, though, I do have our listener shout out for the week and a quick announcement for this month's Fibro Workshop. First, our listener shout out. This is an email I received a couple weeks ago from Stephanie, and she says, "Thank you so much for your podcast. It is so real and so helpful. For most of this past year, I was very depressed because of my diagnosis. I did not feel like I was in my body. She says, I was constantly mourning for my body and what it was that I was dealing with. Hearing your words helped me radically accept what I can and can't do. And because of this acceptance, I feel like I am now capable of so much more despite my diagnosis." Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thanks for reaching out. This is the perfect listener shout out for this episode with Jenni. Years ago, I'll talk about this in a minute, but years ago when I was first diagnosed, I was feeling exactly the same way. I felt like the real me was stuck inside this body that was no longer cooperating, and I was searching for answers. And running across ChronicBabe was actually the thing that first gave me hope. So I am glad that we're going to be interviewing Jenni, but also that I am able to now pass that on to new people who are being diagnosed and, feeling stuck and like you're not really living in your own body anymore. So thank you for that message, Stephanie. And thank you for sending that in. Our quick little announcement, I just wanted to let you guys know, as you know, if you've been hearing this podcast, we are doing a monthly Fibro workshop every month during 2020. And so our March Fibro workshop is coming up on Tuesday, March 24th, and that is going to be all about how to talk so your doctor will listen. We're going to be talking about some communication ideas, ways that you can communicate better. We're also going to talk about the things that you can actually do to help them listen to you, like the non-communication parts of things. We're going to talk about how to find good doctors. We're going to be talking about what to look for in good doctors, and a lot of other things along those lines. So I hope that you will join us. That's Tuesday, March 24th, and you can RSVP and get all of the information at fibroworkshop.com. And when you go to that website, if you're listening to this after March 24th, which I know a lot of you will be as we get new listeners and you go back and listen, just go to fibroworkshop.com and you'll see whatever the current workshop is. It's just that same web link, and we just post the most current workshop on there for you so that you have that. Now, I would like to introduce you to my friend Jenni. If you don't know her, Jenni Grover is ChronicBabe. And writing has been Jenni's passion since she was an itty bitty girl growing up in Houston, Texas. She has a journalism degree from Northwestern University, which took her places she never imagined. Since 1995, she has called Chicagoland her home, and her clients are actually all over the world. She does quite a bit of traveling as well and speaking in other areas. So you may have met Jenni, even if you aren't in the Chicagoland area there. In 1997, Jenni was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And in the years since then, she has added a handful of other diagnoses to her list, which is something that happens to most of us. So Jenni, when she was diagnosed, she was determined not to let chronic illness and disability get the best of her. So she created ChronicBabe.com, which is a community for women who wanted to feel, and this is Jenni's words, wanted to feel babelicious despite illness. And I have to tell you, when I was diagnosed 10 years after Jenni, I was diagnosed in 2007. When I was out looking for resources, most of them were geared to middle-aged and older women. They were pretty dry websites, very informative for sure, but it was a little bit more like reading medical literature. And when I found chronicbabe.com, there was this babelicious, actually the word I should be using is boobalicious. You'll hear that in today's interview. That's what Jenni told her web designer she wanted the website to look like. She wanted it to look boobalicious. And so when I found her website with all of its bright colors and fun and irreverence, a little bit of irreverence, and poking fun at ourselves and at our illness, and you know, the whole proverbial making lemonade out of lemons, I just fell in love. It also gave me my hope back that here I was in my early 30s being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, mid 30s, and I didn't feel old yet. I was newly diagnosed and still, feeling like I had a lot of life still in me. And so I loved finding ChronicBabe where I could acknowledge that I was living with a chronic illness and still a babe. So Jenni created this amazing community and resource. And with her training as an investigative journalist and the creative passion of a lifelong writer, she used all of her skills and transformed her career and became a resource and a beacon of hope for all of us with chronic illnesses. And she also did it to make sure that our stories make a difference, and a difference not just for us in telling it, but in all the lives of all the other people, all the millions of people who are living with chronic pain and chronic illness. Now, Jenni's new work is all about creative resilience, and you'll actually hear about that in today's episode. I personally believe, and I told Jenni this in our interview, that her transition from ChronicBabe, both being ChronicBabe and supporting that work, that the website, YouTube channel, all the things, that transition from there into doing this work of creative resilience actually is a perfect demonstration of what creative resilience is really all about. It's about making life work for you. which is what Jenni has been teaching us all along with Chronic Babe. So I'm excited for you to hear about this new chapter in Jenni's life and hear more about creative resilience. Now, there are a few websites I want to give you. Of course, all of this information is going to be available on the podcast website. So just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/31 for this episode, and you will find all of these links. You can find Jenni at jennigrover.com, and she's Jenni with an I, Jenni, Grover.com. That's where you'll find her main website if you're interested in knowing more about her and the work that she does. You'll also find her new work at creativeresilience.com. That is where you will find the information on the new course that she is starting and about the School of Creative Resilience, which I love. That we will also have in the show notes the specific link to that class. It's not real friendly just to say, so I'll just put that in the show notes and you can grab that there. In my interview with Jenni, there are a couple of things that came up that I wanted to direct you to other episodes. So Jenni and I talk about the fact that it's so easy to get stuck focusing on your illness and lose some of the joy in life. So I would love to direct you to episode 13, where I talk about how to add more joy to your life. This is a walkthrough of an exercise that I use with my clients, and it's a great way to purposefully add more joy to your life. So that is episode 13. You'll find it at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/13, or just look for episode 13 wherever you listen to podcasts. And then I'm also actually going to direct you to a podcast episode that is not available yet as I'm recording this, and that is our next episode, episode 32. As you listen to my interview with Jenni, I give a sneak preview of what our next episode is all about. And that's about the fact that your world does not revolve around your illness. It revolves around your healing. And so I talk a little bit about that with Jenni, kind of give a little teaser. And then in a couple of weeks, when the new episode comes out on the 17th of March, I will actually dive into that topic a little bit more and talk about why I am so involved in the fibromyalgia community, the fibromyalgia world. I coach clients all day long. Everything I talk about is fibromyalgia, and why that is a positive thing for me, why that's not dwelling on illness, because what I'm actually doing is focusing on how we can get you better. So as you listen to these podcasts, you may have picked up on that by now. But these podcast episodes, they're not about your illness. They're about how you can get better. And fibromyalgia is just our starting point. But our journey, our end goal is being well. And so I hope you'll come back in a couple of weeks and hear episode 32 as I talk about how your world doesn't revolve around your illness. It revolves around your healing. So with that, I'm going to dive into my interview with Jenni. I hope you will stay with us. It's a little bit on the longer side, but Jenni is so much fun to talk to. I think you will enjoy her as much as I do. I do want to give a quick caveat. Partway through our interview, for some reason, Jenni's earbuds and microphone just decided to disconnect from her computer. So you will hear the sound change partway through. She had to switch over to regular headphones. You might also hear at a certain part of the interview, you might also hear a few clicks and pops where her microphone was touching her necklace occasionally. I apologize, you'll hear a little bit of that. But my interview was so good with Jenni, I didn't want to make her say everything all over again. So just bear with us, and just through those parts and the second half of the interview, we got it all worked out and everything is fine. So here we go. Enjoy my talk with Jenni. Hi, Jenni. Welcome. I'm so glad that we could talk today. I'm excited to talk with you about all the new things.
I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So, for people who might not be familiar with you, which I can't imagine that that's even possible, Chronic Babe, as I mentioned in my introduction, you were one of the first resources that I found when I was diagnosed, and it was so important to me when I found Chronic Babe because it was the only resource that I found that really spoke to me as someone who was, in my early 30s. That wasn't like geared towards middle-aged older women. So, um, so thank you for that.
Hey, I'm so glad I could be there for that.
Yes. So I would love for you to share just a little bit of your story. Like how did you come into this whole chronic world? How was Chronic Babe born? And kind of get us up to speed a little.
Oh, sure. Well, um, it's been kind of a wild ride. I've been doing Chronic Babe for more than 15 years now. Um, when I started it, I was, well, let me go back to when I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is when I was 25, and that was in 1997. And so when I got diagnosed, there were no resources. I got a little pamphlet, like a trifold pamphlet. And that was it. That was literally all I got. And I went hunting online and I couldn't find anything. I tried going to support groups, and everyone in the support groups was older and they seemed to be almost irritated that I was there. Like I got a lot of disbelief and a lot of like, you're too young or you're too pretty or whatever. And it's like, well, those are great problems to have, but that's actually not the case. I actually do have, this chronic condition. And it was very scary to be so young and not have any idea how I was going to move forward with my life. And every person I was meeting at that point who had fibro were on disability. They were using wheelchairs and they were very compromised. And I was so freaked out that I was so young. I felt like I was just starting my adult life. And this was what I was looking forward to. So, it took me a few years to kind of get my act together, kind of get the right care, work on acceptance, and kind of figure out what that meant for me. And the more I did that, the more I was motivated to create the very resource that I had wished for when I got sick. And so that's how Chronic Babe came to be. I come from a journalism background. I've worked as a magazine editor and I've done all kinds of communication stuff. And blogging had just gotten started. If you can imagine a world where blogging is a brand new concept.
That was a little while ago, not to date ourselves, but
yeah, that was just a smidge, just a few minutes ago. And and so I started blogging about Chronic Babe, and I started to share this message that I thought it was very possible for us to be really kick-ass, cool young women and still have illness. Like that those two weren't mutually exclusive. And so as I started to do that, I met a few more people. There really were only a handful of us blogging about chronic illness at the beginning. And what started as a labor of love and just like a fun side project to do eventually turned into my full-time gig. I did consulting with lots of big corporations and nonprofits. I wrote a book about chronic illness, about the Chronic Babe approach to it anyway, called Chronic Babe 101. And I traveled the world speaking to hundreds of audiences. It was like a really amazing thing. So I'm so lucky that, I've heard people say chronic illness is a gift and it teaches you so much. And I'm like, that is a gift I want to return. I'm not going to say, but also I've been able to turn it into something really beautiful and help a lot of people along the way. So, I still would give it back if I could, but I've got it. So I'm going to make the most of it.
Totally, totally. I absolutely get that. And now it's time for a new chapter and a new thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So people who are listening who are familiar with Chronic Babe, maybe even being on the Chronic Babe email list, we got an email a little while back that said that an era was coming to an end. And I'm sure you've had a million questions about that. And I would love to give you the chance to talk about that, because I really, just knowing you and knowing your work and how you think about things, I know that the decision to move to something else is actually like you're living out the thing that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, you know, I've been doing this work for so long. And like I said, when I started, literally no one was doing this kind of work. The world we live in now is there are thousands and thousands of people blogging about how to thrive with chronic illness. There are lots of multimedia companies approaching it. There are so many great books out there. I mean, there's so much out there. And for me, what I felt like was that after 15, ish years, um, I was feeling some burnout. And I'm not serving my audience if I'm feeling crispy fried, and burnt out. And I'm not serving myself. I'm not doing my best work if I'm not like pumped every day to work on it. Right. Um, it was hard to accept that. I really kind of, it took me a while to get to a place of accepting that, because ChronicBabe is like my baby. And I've never done anything for 15 years. I've never, like, I have a couple friendships that are older than that, but that's it. Right. So the decision was really hard. I actually really agonized about it. And then I had this new path of work I wanted to pursue about creative resilience. And, um, for the first time in my life, I kind of started venturing out with not actually an end game in sight, without, um, I've always had a job, I've always had a career, I've always known exactly what the next move is. And I'm in a moment right now in my life where I don't know all the answers. And that's super uncomfortable for me. But
Right? My sister used to always tease me that I was the person that would want to know the dance that we were going to go learn at dance class
yeah,
before we got there.
that is me to a T. That is definitely how I am. I always want to be, and I always want to fix things, and I always want to solve a thing. And that's just how I've always been. But that's not how life works. And, if anyone out there who's listening who has any creative juices knows that like creativity and rebirthing yourself is a messy, messy process. So I'm trying to like get comfy being messy. and, so that's been really fun. So I've started to work on this new work that is all about creative resilience and teaching people. And I do think it's a really natural evolution of my ChronicBabe work. A lot of the stuff I taught in ChronicBabe um, was creative resilience. It was teaching people how to think creatively, to think in new ways about situations that were scary or unknown. And everything I taught was really about building resilience, about teaching people how to build community, how to build emotional, what's the flexibility, and how to get comfortable finding resources and things like that. So, I kept thinking about, how do I take these things I love? I love working with people. I love speaking in front of audiences. I love helping people. How do I create work that's about that, but that I'm going to be really energized by? So I'm still serving, the same people, but potentially a lot broader audience. So that's how creative resilience came to be.
So how long was it from I know you said you sort of agonized over the decision, right? How long was it from the time where you had this first thought that maybe you needed to take things in a different direction to when we all got that email?
So, from the moment that I first started feeling like maybe I needed to do something different to when I announced it was probably about a year, which is a long time, but I'm kind of a slow learner. I think it's hard, when you work on something so long, when you work on something like this is the longest I ever worked on any project. This is the most amount of time I ever spent on any one thing. And it's really so close to my heart and so personal. It was really hard to acknowledge and accept that maybe it was time for me to do something else. And I still want to be able to work with a lot of the same audience, like anyone who wants to come with me. I don't want to lose those people because I love, there's people I've worked with since I started ChronicBabe, and it's so awesome to get to continue to work with them. So coming up with a project that would keep me excited and challenged and feeling adventurous has been a really big challenge for me. It's been no small feat.
No kidding. And I know too that like you really care about your people in your community. So I'm sure that was a big piece of dragging your feet maybe a little bit too, is just caring about what happens to all of those people too.
I do. And, I've heard from a lot of people who are sad, who are scared, who are having a hard time imagining a world without my work. And I try to remind those people when they write to me, like, okay, first of all, you've been doing the work. So the work is with you. I'm not going to shut down my ChronicBabe YouTube channel. That's going to stay there. I'm not going to take down the website. So that's hundreds and hundreds of resources that'll stay there. The book is still out there. Like all those materials are still available for people who need that kind of work. But this is like a next evolution in that work. It's just like the next chapter.
Right. So tell us about creative resilience. What do those words mean to you? What does creative resilience mean to you?
Sure. Well, I think that so much of what I've taught with ChronicBabe is about resilience. It's about that, it's right there in the name, Chronic Babe. So we are chronically being, tested every day. We have to be able to bounce back every time different things happen to us. And so, when I first started the work, I didn't really understand what resilience meant. And now I understand that I embody resilience.
True story.
Yeah. And so do so many people in our community, right? Like you do too. So, but I'm very creative. I have been since I was, the first picture that I have of me is like I'm drawing something. I knew I wanted to be a journalist when I was in high school. I've always made art. I've always made things. And so I wanted to do something with that creativity. And a lot of ChronicBabe work has been around creating the kind of world that we need so that we can live. And so the idea of creative resilience to me is teaching people how to tap into their innate creative energies, which I think we all possess, which I know we all possess, and then building that inner resource and then using that to boost resilience and joy. So there are lots of different ways we can do that. And I'm calling it my School of Creative Resilience. And I'm going to be offering courses, and I'm going to write another book, which if you had asked me 2 years ago if I'd write another book, I'd be like, no way.
That's not just the small feet doing it.
No. And now I'm like, oh, let's do another book. So,
but it's so interesting as your work changes and evolves, like you have new things you want to say, right?
Yeah. If we stay the same, if we keep doing the same stuff over and over again, it's like, there's no excitement there. Eventually the way I work anyway, and the way I stay motivated is to continually change things up and to try new things. So I want to bring our people, our fibro people, our other people with chronic illness, I want to bring them along with me because I know that in my life, creative resilience has helped me get through some really insane stuff. So, I don't think I've ever talked about it with you before, but I don't think so. But when I was a kid, I was part of a really nasty custody suit. And I like even to the point of I had my own attorney. I had a state appointed attorney for a court case that started when I was 11 and didn't finish until I was 13. And essentially I emancipated myself from my mom. And that journey through that court case was traumatic. It was tumultuous. It was life-changing. And a big part of how I coped with that was writing a novella. And the novella, as you would guess, had pretty predictable content, themes. It was about a young girl and a family.
Right, exactly.
So not entirely original, But that process of working through my challenges and writing down and talking through my feelings and imagining the potential outcome that I wanted was honestly, I feel like it kept me going through that whole process. And so I feel like a lot of what I've done with Chronic Babe is the same. Like you're in a situation, it's pretty terrible. There's a lot about it you can't change. So you have to learn how to accept it. But then how do you create the tools for yourself to thrive while it's happening? Um, and so that's what I want to continue to teach people to do. It's definitely a sweet spot for me. And I know that it's helped me so much with my chronic illness journey. Um, not just creating Chronic Babe, but like creating the friendships that I needed or figuring out innovative ways to store all my friggin' medicines in my bathroom. Cause there's a lot of them.
Yes, I remember some of those posts with your bling on your on your medication cases.
Yeah, girl. Like I'm the only person I know who had a blinged out inhaler case for a long time.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. But like that's the kind of stuff that we have to do. It's a small way of just taking back some of our power. It's just a little way that we can feel just a little bit more in control of our situation.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think that, over the years, as I've worked with different people, especially through my membership program, I did a 5-year program through Chronic Babe that was a membership site with all kinds of ongoing learning opportunities. The people who thrived the most in that were the people who got really creative, who really devoted a little bit of energy each day to thinking through, okay, I've got this part of my chronic illness stuff is really challenging to me. So I need to think through possibilities for dealing with that and what resources do I need to gather? What connections do I need to make with other people to build the life that I want? And those are the people that thrive. Like those are the people who keep, really coming back to me and are excited and want to keep working on stuff. And I'm just helping them, but they're doing the work. Like they're taking themselves on that journey. So
Right. And I would love for you to just talk a little bit. A lot of people, I think, have a certain idea when it comes to creativity or being an artist or being creative, right? But we all are in so many different ways.
oh, Tami, yeah, that's so true. So this is a thing that's gotten me so much over the years is I am not very good at drawing things. And so for a long time, I thought that I wasn't that creative because I couldn't draw things. And I hesitated to talk about myself as an artist because I thought, well, how can I not be a real artist if I can't draw? You know? Um,
Right. I can't draw, I can't play an instrument, like whatever your picture is of.
yeah. So who am I to say, oh, I'm this creative, amazing artist? I really hesitated. And I think that's like baked into our culture because we emphasize completing a specific kind of art and we call that creativity. And what we don't do very much as a culture is think about all the other ways that we use creative skills like iteration and resource gathering and collaboration in our life. So, there's lots of ways that we are innately creative. We're born with the ability to make things and make connections and learn new skills. We have that within us, and it's just tapping into it. So, when I think about creativity, I'm thinking about the process or a practice or a lifestyle. So, I'm not thinking about whether or not people are creative because they're able to draw me a picture of a specific thing. I'm thinking about, first of all, I know everyone is creative. I just know that you have to grow that resource. It's not something that just like magically comes through if you're not feeding that spirit. So when I think about creativity as a chronic babe in our context, in our community, I'm thinking about that very thing, like blinging out my inhaler case or my medications case. Or, sometimes I'll write myself little songs about the tasks I have to do and I'll sing them to myself. So I'll be like, here I am on the floor. I'm doing this third stretch of the morning. Like I'll just totally try to entertain myself. Such a nerd.
Oh my gosh, I'm laughing so hard about this because like that sounds just like my house.
Oh yeah.
My husband and I like have songs about everything.
It's the best. Having songs about things is a gift. I'm not going to say my singing voice is a gift to others, but the fact that the fact that that you and I are able to do that in our households, it's like, Sure, we're not making a painting, but who cares? When we think about creativity as just finished products, it's like a commodification of a life skill. And instead, I want our audience and the people I work with to think about creativity as a collection of skills that they use to do what I've been teaching through Chronic Babe, which is crafting the life that they want to live. So I think about it in all these other aspects. So merging creativity and resilience, how that happens is that when we are able to harness that creative energy, when we're able to keep ourselves in that state of flow, we are more resilient. So here's a great example. I broke my toe last night. I
Oh, Jenni.
Yeah, it's been a fun 24 hours. I dropped a can of LaCroix on my pinky toe, and I've already broken that toe twice before. So I think it was maybe prone to breakage. I don't know. I knew right away that I'd done something terrible. And so today I had physical therapy, just as a coincidence. I had physical therapy. I showed it to my PT. She was like, "Oh, that's totally broken. That's insane. You got to go get an x-ray." But I said to her in that moment, I said, "I feel so discouraged. I've been working so hard on working out. I've been going to the gym 6 days a week. I've been really getting stronger and stronger, and I don't want this to set me back." And she looked at me and she waved her hand over my toe and she was like, "So this part of you has a little challenge right now, but the whole rest of you is okay. So let's work with what you have, not focus on this one little thing. So I want you to get creative," she said, "about your fitness. So that means when you go to the gym tomorrow, you're going to find any machine that has arm controls on it. And you're going to just sit on the machine and not pedal, but you're going to use the arm controls. So you're going to get your cardio going, or you're going to go get in the pool. You maybe aren't going to take a super intense pool fitness class, but you're going to water walk, or you're going to paddle around, and you're going to remember that you're challenging yourself. And this is an opportunity for you to get creative with your workout practice." And I was like, God, that's why you get paid the big bucks.
Right, exactly. And as you've been talking about creativity, one of the things that really keeps popping into my mind is creative problem solving, right? Like taking whatever comes our way and not just doing the standard response, but maybe thinking of something that's maybe a little bit more out of the box that maybe works a little better for us.
Hmm. Yeah, oh, right. Because there's no cookie cutter way to do things. Like there's no one right. Listen, plenty of chronic illness, consultants, coaches, people over the years have told me this is the way you do it. This is the protocol. This is the order in which you take things. This is what you do. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that there's any one single way that we do stuff. So, I've worked with tens of thousands of people over the course of Chronic Babe. So I've seen everything. So I know that there's many, many, many ways to approach this challenge. So my goal with creative resilience is teaching people how to start to cultivate that feeling of creativity day to day so that they're constantly coming up with new ways to approach the challenges that come with chronic illness. Or in my case, breaking my toe has nothing to do with chronic illness. That's just a thing that happens. So, we want to create that we want to create that energy and cultivate that energy so that when those things happen, we're not completely knocked on our butts. We want to be able to kind of, bounce right back up again. I bounced right back up again today. I put on my lipstick. I went to go for physical therapy, and then I went for an x-ray, and you go and you do those things and you don't feel, for me, it means that I very quickly in the span of a couple hours went from feeling deflated and discouraged to feeling like I have a lot of possibility in front of me. And that to me is the crux of what I've been doing with Chronic Babe, is like trying to help people get to where they can generate that feeling within themselves. But we don't do it alone, right? Like a big part of Chronic Babe has always been community building. And so like the relationship I have with my physical therapist, she's not just my healthcare provider and then our relationship is done and we walk out the door. Like I've worked to build a relationship with her so that she gets my brain and I get hers, and she can say to me, she can do things like point at my toe and like wave her arms over me and say, "This is all the stuff about you that works." Like can listen to her and accept that, you know? I think a lot of people in our situations get really resistant because they keep getting knocked down. And I really understand that. I really have been there many times in my life. I think all of us have been there at least once where we just feel completely defeated. And I never want people to think that I don't understand that that's a reality that a lot of us face. That is part of living with chronic illness is you're going to have those moments. But the more we can build those resources for ourselves, the more excited we can become about generating resources for ourselves, the more we're able to bounce back when that stuff happens. So I will be in the gym tomorrow. I may only be working out my upper body tomorrow. It could probably use it.
Right, exactly.
So, because, I used to joke when I started ChronicBabe that I was serving women like 15 to 40, and I aged out of my demographic like years ago. So I definitely So, I gotta try to keep this middle-aged body going. So I gotta be at the gym.
Yes, yes, exactly. Oh gosh, resilience. I think I mentioned this to you, but I remember being in a conference once, and one of the doctors that was speaking said that the somebody's resilience is probably the best predictor for how well they're going to do with their. He was a chronic pain doctor, but whatever their chronic condition is, and I think that that's so true because resilience isn't just about getting back up when you fall down. And it certainly is that, but it's also learning how to adjust. Right. So like and this is true for everybody, not just in a chronic babe body, but like as you get older, your body is different. Right. And so like, how do we, how do we work out in a different body? How do we keep gardening in a different body? How do we keep, all of the things, right? And having that flexibility and creativity to think of new ways of doing things is a huge piece of resilience.
I agree. I think a lot of people get really stuck and they feel, and I really understand too that when we're sick and then we find a thing that works for us, we don't want to stop doing that thing because we don't want to go back to how we felt before we found that thing. So it can be really scary to think about, potentially changing that up. And so I get that a lot of people get scared and they're nervous to try something different. And I think when it comes to creativity, we can have this real desire to fulfill a cultural norm that if you're creative, then you make stuff, you make a finished product. And so when it comes to creativity, we may feel scared to put ourselves out there, like I get nervous if I have to draw something for someone who I know is really good at drawing, but whatever, like what's the worst thing that's going to happen if I draw a really dumb looking dog, who's going to be upset? But it takes practice because a lot of us, we have that pressure and we want everything to be just right. And that pressure is strong. It's not imagined. That's like real cultural pressure. So we have to continually challenge ourselves to release a little bit of that pressure and let ourselves get a little weird and messy and, make mistakes.
Right. There's a huge amount of grace I think we have to give ourselves and permission to not do it all perfectly, and to be a little bit more. I don't know. I like thinking about life as a big science experiment. I mean, I love math and science, so that's my background. But thinking about being curious about if I do this, what happens, rather than this thing, expecting it to work or expecting it to be perfect.
Yeah, I um I want to come back to talking about the gym for a second. I'm like kind of obsessed with the gym right now, but to this point, so I'm supposed to, when I work out, my healthcare team's recommendation is to hit a certain um, heart rate, for optimal cardiovascular training. but I have fibro. And so it's really hard for me to get to that heart rate without doing high impact stuff, but I'm not supposed to do high impact stuff. And so I've been trying to come up with different ways to do low impact stuff that raises my heart rate. And one thing I've learned to do for myself, and this took a while to get comfortable with, but is I raise my arms over my head while I'm on the stationary bike. Because when you raise your arms over your head, your body has to work so much harder to pump blood up into your hands. And so I look like a dork at the gym. And I also I have music pumping. And so then I start to snap and clap my hands over my head and
Jenni's
rock
having
out.
her personal rave at the gym on the bike.
And no one else is doing that. Everyone else is just being real normal on their equipment. And I'm over there it is a major party on the stationary bike. And I know I look ridiculous. And it took me months to get comfortable doing it without being super self-conscious. And now I think it's so fun. And I definitely see people looking at me. I'm sure they're wondering what the hell I'm doing. And what I'm doing is taking care of myself, right? So it's we have to think of these creative ways to meet our goals and challenge ourselves. And the challenge is how vulnerable do we get? How weird are we willing to get in front of strangers? Um, and I think for a lot of people that's a big stretch. So I'm not saying everyone has to go out and have a party in the gym, but you might need to do stuff a little differently, and that's okay. I actually feel like it's so much more fun that way. And then I also get this great feeling of pride in myself that I've figured out a way to do this that works for me, and that I'm making good decisions about taking care of myself. And so, I would really rather people come over and go, "Why are you doing that?" I would love to tell them why. I would love to help give them permission to also try to do things like that. So it's really fun to me to teach people how to do that. I think that there's a lot of resilience that it's baked into us to a certain degree. We either have a lot of it innately or we don't. But I also think we can grow that resilience over time. I don't think that it's just because you didn't feel resilient as a younger person doesn't mean you can't learn how to do that as you get older, you know?
Exactly. I was actually just going to ask you about that. So, if somebody is feeling like their resilience muscle isn't very strong, right, and they want to build that, let's talk about some of the ways that they might be able to do that. I know one of the things for me, this idea of being uncomfortable doing things I'm not good at yet. The more I do that, the easier it gets, right? So whether that is doing karaoke or I did indoor skydiving once.
I have always wanted to do that. That's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Is it fun?
Oh yeah, it I am never going to jump out of an airplane on purpose. Let's just no way, never going to happen. My husband did once and I told him, I love you too much to watch that happen even. But indoor skydiving was super cool. It was really hard. It was physically difficult. And when we went, we did it as a group, and I did the one flight or whatever they call it, and I just knew my fibro body was that was awesome, but we're done.
Okay, great. You're not going to go do that 5 more times today before you go home.
No, so I let somebody else take my second turn, but it was amazing. And the most amazing part of it was just that feeling of having done it, right? Doing something I had never done before, wasn't quite sure I could even do, right? There's just that empowerment, and it just makes you feel strong. Maybe not necessarily physically strong, because I felt like a noodle after, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually strong, kind of.
Yeah, well, and that's the bit of it is you didn't do it by yourself. You did it with friends and you did it with professionals, right? So that's a big part of resilience for me is that community aspect. You're not in it alone, you have support, you build those relationships with people. So that's a big part of it. So I love that that's for you a really resilient act. Um, you know, the first years of being sick, I felt like I kept injuring myself or having all these symptoms that were unexplained. And I was always afraid of hurting myself. And so I lived for quite a few years before Chronic Babe started, really fearful, really afraid I was going to hurt myself or make a mistake or injure myself. Um, and so I applaud you because like I've been wanting to do that and I have not done it yet. So now I feel like this is going to be my year. This is it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going
Oh,
to jump
yeah.
out of not an airplane. I'm going to jump into whatever the tube of air is at the high rise building. Um, yeah, I think that challenging ourselves to do those things is important, but that community aspect is huge. And then I think that a lot of times when we want to build our resilience, we need to start really small. Um, and so I encourage people to start building teeny tiny little things into their life that they do a little bit differently, and they allow them so the stakes are low, right? So if it doesn't work out, maybe they try a different workout and they're a little sore the next day and they don't like how that feels. Or maybe they try to cook a different meal and it doesn't taste as good as they wished it did. The stakes are very low in those instances. So a lot of what I'm going to be doing through my creative resilience work is teaching people how to cultivate that kind of daily self challenge. And so we're going to build it into all these little aspects of our day to day life, like your sock drawer. Like the tiniest, I'm talking about the tiniest things, but I want to challenge people, because it's so funny. Like I have this one friend and she's always like teasing me about how organized my dresser drawers are. And first of all, I lived in a city for almost my entire life. I live in the suburbs now for the first time in my life, but I always lived in a city. In the last 25 years or so, I lived in teeny places. And so everything had to be packed in just right because that's all the space I had. So my sock drawer is really not perfectly, nothing's perfect, but it's very organized. And I have one friend who's always teasing me. But then I go to her house and it is chaos. And she can't find the things that she wants. And she's constantly upending everything in her house to find the thing that she wants. And I'm like, I'm not saying I'm doing it better or my way is right and your way is wrong, but I don't know why you don't want to just try it. like, what's the harm in spending 15 minutes putting your socks, like folding them and putting them in the drawer? Like, what's that going to hurt you? But some people get very stuck, and this is how I've always done it, and I need to change. But so I'm going to be teaching people lots of little day to day things that they can do to challenge themselves. And it starts with things like your sock drawer, because I want to go really low stakes with people.
I love that. I love that because it's a transferable skill, right? Like the more comfortable, like we were talking about with, karaoke and indoor skydiving, the more comfortable you get stepping outside your comfort zone, the easier it is to do that when maybe it matters, when maybe that means trying a new treatment option or a new therapy, or maybe working out for maybe the first time and wondering, I don't know, is this going to put me in a flare? Right.
Yeah, yeah. And I think if you, like, let's say, so I make oatmeal every morning for breakfast and I'm pretty consistent. I always put a tiny bit of maple syrup and a cut up banana in it. But, sometimes I want to play around. So I might throw some sesame seeds on there, or I might throw some dried cherries in there, or what. I like to play with it because doing the same thing over and over and over again, there's some nice rhythm in that sometimes, but challenging ourselves to try new things is a way to keep things interesting. And I mean, I know you know this, and I know a lot of people listening to this know this. Like, fibro life is pretty friggin' challenging sometimes. And for a lot of us, we might spend days at home not really able to do much of anything when we're in a flare up. And so sometimes our days can feel very boring and they kind of bleed into each other. And so challenging ourselves a little bit each day creatively helps give a little definition, a little bookending to parts of our day, and help us feel like we're more alive, like we're more engaged. And for me, even if that doesn't make my pain or my fatigue better, it makes me feel emotionally a little bit stronger, and it makes and just joyful because what happens, I think, and I think this was kind of what helped contributed to feeling burnt out with Chronic Babe, was that the emphasis on joy kind of disappeared. Like, we want to help people succeed and excel, and we want to help people cope, and we want to help them keep going. But sometimes it was wearing me out so much that there was no joy. And I don't want to live in a world where I'm not feeling joyful about what I'm doing. Right. And so, someone listening to this, they might be home and tomorrow morning they might make their same oatmeal and they just feel like it's the same damn breakfast they eat every day. Well, spice it up a little bit, girl. Throw some walnuts on there, whatever. I know it's the tiniest, tiniest thing, but it might make you feel like you have more resources, like things aren't boring. They're not the same. You're not groundhog daying it. You're actually like living. And there's some fun. And so I think that we kind of overlook those little moments of joy sometimes. And I really want to help people find that feeling.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And it's so interesting we're talking about this because the next episode that I record for this podcast is actually about how our world actually revolves around our healing, not a revolving around our illness.
Oh, ah, I like that perspective. That's interesting.
So I won't give you the podcast episode right
Okay.
now
Yeah,
because that's the
right.
next one.
No.
But that's the idea. A lot of people ask me that, as a coach, how do you work with so many people when it's also focused on, fibromyalgia, also focused on their illness? And the answer is it's not. We're actually focusing on how can we feel better? What can we do differently? How do we add more joy? How do we have the life we want to live? So the focus is on the positive and not so much on the negative.
Yeah.
Um,
Like the
yeah.
day-to-day illness management stuff, I mean, it is super important, but that's in the background for me. That's not, I don't want to emphasize that stuff. When I'm doing yoga every morning and stretching out my body, I don't want to do it thinking, oh, I got to do this to take care of myself. What a drag. Like, no, I want to be silly. When I get in downward dog pose, I want to make barking noises. Like, I want to be ridiculous. Because it makes my husband laugh, and that makes me feel good. It's like the emphasis is on finding that joyful aspect and the silliness and the playfulness. We man, our culture wants to just kill curiosity. There's so much about our culture that just tamps down that curiosity, that feeling of wanting to know more or wanting to be playful. And I am all about the playful. I really think that it's so, I feel like it is so vital. And even in the name Chronic Babe, like I could have named it Jenny's Chronic Illness Help Site or whatever. And that would have been fine. But calling it Chronic Babe means people are like, what? They
Right. Right. And then identifying as a chronic babe, we're identifying with both the chronic and the babe.
correct. There's room for it all. We contain multitudes.
Yes, yes, I love it. So tell us about the School of Creative Resilience. I love that you call it that. That's so
Thanks.
fantastic.
It's so lofty. Well, I was trying to come up with a name that would be fun and that would evoke a certain feeling. And because I want to teach a bunch of different techniques to people, there wasn't one technique that I could name it after. And so I thought calling it the School of Creative Resilience means there's room for whatever else I want to add to later. Um, so there'll be a lot of aspects to the work. There'll be, like I said, definitely another book, which is nuts. Um, I know you've written a few books, so maybe we can talk a different time about how to.
Absolutely.
Um, but so the first thing I'm going to be offering is this course that I'm offering, which is called the Daily Creative, and it's a step-by-step practice to building a creative habit in 30 days. And so it is a course that offers a lot of day-to-day training. And I don't want people to feel overwhelmed because it's not like they're getting stuff from me every single day, but they have the choice to take the resources I share. And the way I encourage people is to take about 15 minutes a day to practice some small creative task um, as applied to really mundane aspects of their life. And so the work is to help them build that practice every single day so that it becomes more normal for them, a more routine to be thinking creatively, thinking outside of the box. So that's the first thing that I'm offering. It's a little scary to be stepping outside of my comfort zone because while offering digital learning is not outside of my comfort zone, this work is very different in a lot of ways from Chronic Babe. So, but coming up with this course has been super fun because I want to challenge people. Like I said, the sock drawer, I want them to think about their sock drawer. I want to give people a chance to practice. So that's the first way I'm really working with people. Later on, I'll have more ways for them to work individually with me one-on-one on their creative practice. Um, which is going to be really fun. And I just haven't quite figured out exactly what shape that's going to take. I am doing a bunch of speaking gigs. So I'm speaking to 3 different groups this month about creative resilience and kind of talking about my methodology. And all those groups happen to be chronic illness advocacy groups. So I'm not only going to work with our Chronic Babe audience, I want to work with anyone who wants to cultivate this creative practice. But chronic babes are my people. So spoonies are my people. So those are the people I'm working with first, because those are the people that I feel the most connected to in my heart, because I know a lot of what they need. And so I want to be able to offer that to them. And then later on, I'm going to be doing all other kinds of digital learning and probably traveling a lot and speaking at different events. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds.
Oh, I love it so much. So, you guys listening in, we will have in the show notes. So, if you go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/31, this is episode 31, you will find the links to Jenni's new class and her website, the Creative Resilience website, all kinds of goodies. So, we'll have all that out there for you guys.
That's going to be so great, Tami. I'm so excited to share this with your folks. I mean, you and I have known each other for quite a while now. And, back to that idea of building community and how it keeps us lifted, like these kinds of friendships like we have, this is how we keep ourselves like fed, you know?
True story. Absolutely. I was just having that same conversation with Eva of Wellacopia, the Invisible Not Broken podcast. If you guys aren't listening to that, I would highly recommend it. We'll link to that too. But we were having that same conversation about how we all need community, and people like you and I and Eva who are helping to create community for other people. Like, we also need community.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah.
It goes both ways.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a pretty open book. I live a lot of my life out there in front of people, but I definitely also have relationships and friendships with people where I don't want to share all of that publicly. And so it is true. Like, building community for me has been, I mean, honestly, Tami, I feel like it might be the most essential thing that I've done for myself to stay well, despite being sick, is having that community, not just through Chronic Babe, but like really being intentional about cultivating friendships that support me in what I'm doing and that I can support other people in what they're doing, and building relationships with people who get it, who get that I'm not always physically there, but I am always there, heart-wise, and I'm always a text message away. Like, building those kinds of connections with people honestly has been the biggest thing that's helped me thrive. So I know there's going to be a lot of that in my new work too, teaching people how to do that. But yeah, we need each other. We need to be able to talk offline about all the stuff we're doing that we can't share.
Right. Exactly. Sorry, y'all. You don't get to listen to the whole conversation. But you make a really good point that like none of us can really do this alone. And I know there are a lot of people who are listening right now who feel like they're doing this alone. And so, we would love to help you create those communities, but also in the meantime, you can do things like, connect with Jenni online and her courses and listen to this podcast, have me coach you on the way to work or whatever it is, have my voice in your head. I'm cool with that. You can create a virtual community if the people who are closest to you in your life aren't the kind of support system you need. You can create that in other ways. Yeah. It's so important. I mean, Jenni, I kind of considered you part of that community for me when I think I first was following you on Twitter and your cute little orange shoes. Like, I always think of those orange shoes when I think of you.
I'm so sad. I only recently gave up those shoes. They were the best shoes I ever had. But girl, you cannot wear a pair of shoes for 15 years. Like, you got Eventually you got to give it up.
You
But yeah,
do. You do.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's personal style has been a big thing for me. Like coloring my hair a weird color. Like right now, if you're listening and can't see me, my hair is bright pink, and like wearing funky jewelry and wearing colorful clothes. And like when I go to speak at conferences, if everybody else is in a black suit, I'm there in like a floral dress with bright pink hair and tons of jewelry and probably too much jewelry. Coco Chanel was always like, take one thing off before you go out the door. And I'm
right.
like, let's add another thing. Like,
Right,
is
exactly.
5 necklaces too much? No? Okay. But yeah, I mean, we need that community. I mean, and that's where Chronic Babe started, was me connecting with individuals and realizing through those, kind of intimate relationships that I had something to offer. That I had, it probably wasn't perfect. It definitely wasn't polished, but it was real. And it was something that people really needed to hear and really understood. Um, and so even though I feel nervous about going out and doing this brand new thing, I know that people are here for it. I know that they're going to be, and it may not be polished and it's definitely not going to be perfect, because what is, but I'm going to put myself out there and do this again.
Right, right. And one of the things that I think the success of Chronic Babe should teach all of us is that when we show up authentically, when we aren't afraid to really be who we are, like it was your personality and you being you that made all of that work. Like if you had tried to create Chronic Babe and have it be like all prim and proper and encyclopedic, like we all would have just like it would have looked like everything else out there, and it just whatever.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't talked about this in a long time, but when we first developed the first iteration of the site, there's been 4 different iterations, I think. But um, my friend, who's a web developer, was helping me at the time, and he asked me to describe my style. Like, what did I want for the website? What was the feeling? Could I encapsulate that in one word? And I said, "Boobalicious." And he
Oh
was
my
like,
god, that's awesome.
"What?" Like the face he made, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "This is not your average chronic illness website. I want everything to be pink and bouncy and perky and fun, comfortable and cozy." And so boobalicious. And so he did, like all the corners were rounded and everything was like, upbeat and perky. I'm like, it's like boobalicious and a good bra. Now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, I also need the good support to make that happen. Um, but yeah, I don't, so I do. I like to keep it a little weird, Tami. I like to
Oh my gosh. So you guys who are listening, like take that message for yourself too, right? Like it's you being you. So if that shows up as, everybody says you should manage fibromyalgia this way and it just doesn't work for you, like find your
Mhm.
way,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Make it weird.
Yeah, absolutely. Boobalicious. Oh my gosh. I might have to title this the Boobalicious episode.
Please do. Well, I feel like we didn't talk about boobies enough. We might be overselling, and I'm just afraid we should go back and redo it. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God, Jenny. And laughter, right? Like laughter
Oh
is
yeah.
so important, so
Oh
healing,
yeah.
and has genuine health benefits.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Especially when we can laugh at ourselves,
Hmm.
you
Totally.
know?
Totally. Well, I suppose at this point, though, we could keep chatting forever. We probably should wrap this up. Um, we can have too much of a good thing, perhaps. So, any last thoughts, comments, anything you want to share as we wrap this up?
Sure. Well, I mean, I would just say that I'm super honored to get to talk to you about this. Um I've said it a few times, I'll say it one more time. I'm a little nervous just to make this big change. And so it feels really great to have support and to know you believe in me and to know that people are going to hear about it. It's so awesome. It really makes me feel like this is definitely the next right move for me. And it's a logical evolution of my work. And I'm so excited to help people. So Tami will have links to all my socials and everything in the show notes. And y'all come along for the ride with me. Come talk to me. Talk to me about what scares you about creativity. I'm so excited to hear what freaks you out, because I want to help you get past that. I know that people can.
I love that so much. And the School of Creative Resilience, that's brilliant. And we all can use more of that too. Like, no matter where you are, no matter, how good you are at this stuff. Like, it's one of those things like meditation or any kind of self-management or exercise. Like, there's always space to be better. So I hope you guys will all go check this out. Check Jenni's sites out. Like she said, we'll have all the things for you so that you can connect. And I know we talked offline about this, but this is a self-paced course, right?
It is. Yeah. So when people sign up, it is a course in 7 modules, and it's spread out over the course of a month. So when you sign up, you'll have access to the first module, and you'll start to learn. And then every few days, you'll get notified that there's new content available. So, and then once you've gone through the whole month, you get access to that. You get to keep access to that, for at least a year. And probably I'll just have it be forever. But nothing is exactly forever. but yeah, I mean, I think it's important to me that people are able to work at their pace. Like, not, some people, like, I'm a real slow learner. It would probably take me longer to do the coursework than a month if I were learning it new. But there are other people who are going to dive in and want to just like eat it up. And so I don't want to hold them back either. And also, I understand flare-ups happen, and you might have the best intentions and then have to take a week off or whatever to not work on it. And I don't want people to feel like they're going to fall behind. And so there's that. They don't have to worry about that. It's definitely a chill thing. And I'm going to offer a Facebook group for people who take the course, so that you also get additional support throughout the process. And then, one of my favorite things to do with ChronicBabe has been building Facebook groups, because I think when you do it well, you create a real sense of deep community and deep trust. And so that's my goal. That'll be my goal with this new group too.
Oh, so exciting. I love it so much. So as we're recording this, you guys, it's not out yet, but by the time this episode is released, it will be available. So I'm talking about it because I haven't seen it yet and I'm excited, but y'all can go and find it. It will be available when this episode comes out. So just remember fibromyalgiapodcast.com/31, and you will find all of the goodies. All right, Jenni, thank you again so much. This was such a blast, and I can't wait to see all the fun new things you're going to do.
Thanks, Tami. I'm so happy and thankful to get to spend this time with you today. Let's just keep it boobalicious, okay?
Right on. I love it. All right, you guys. Catch you here next time. Bye.
Bye.
And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. If you're ready to see if working with a fibromyalgia coach can help you feel better faster, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com, where you can schedule a complimentary consultation to explore your options. During this call, we'll discuss your fibromyalgia journey, what your needs and challenges are, and give you recommendations on how to reach your goals the quickest way possible. Thank you for tuning in today, and join us next time as we explore more ways to help you take back control of your life and health. My music and sound editing were done by Daniel Munkus at Subtle Soup Records. Podcast management and creative copy by Sonia Louise of Performance Podcasting.